Carl and Lou here from Games, Brains and a Head-Banging Life. gbhblofficial for short, and it's the Nasties. You know it is. We continue to eke our way slowly towards the end with probably, maybe, arguably, the biggest movie on this list. Certainly one of the most well-known. One of the few to get a remake, put it that way.
Yeah.
And to go for a lot of trouble back in the day to get to where it is nowadays. It's one of those incredible stories. It is, of course, The Last House on the Left, the 1972 American exploitation horror film, written, directed and edited by the legendary and late Wes Craven in his directorial debut. Not a bad place to start.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting your film banned immediately.
Yeah.
Craven, if you didn't know, based his film on the 1960 Swedish film The Virgin Spring, directed by Ingmar Bergman, a famous name as well, which in turn is, funny enough, an adaptation of the Swedish ballad Therese de Trois Yvonne. Probably butchering that, but I don't speak Swedish, so there you go. Of course, famously as well, I think this is always worth noting, Wes Craven obviously gets the props for this, but he developed this film with producer Sean S. Cunningham after they worked together on the film together in 1971. That's worth mentioning because Sean S. Cunningham is a famous producer, director himself, responsible for anybody?
No.
Friday the 13th.
Oh, okay.
So, quite an icon.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Craven wrote a script which was originally overtly pornographic.
Right.
It was not a nice script. On the concept of shock factor, wanted to depict violence in a realistic manner. Once casting began, though, Craven promised a second group of actors auditioning that the film would instead be a traditional horror film. Unsurprisingly, this film was initially very damaging to Wes Craven's career and was controversial for its marketing with a tagline, "Can a movie go too far?" advertising its violence. While not being a massive box office draw at drive-ins, it grossed $3 million against a budget of under $90,000. So it did well. Critics derided the film for its confrontational violence and Craven's use of black comedy, scenes of slapstick comedy intercut with scenes of rape and humiliation, which is weird in the film. It is weird to watch, even by this standard. However, it of course has since achieved a cult following. So, that brings us to the nasty part. To the UK, come over to our island and find out where we get offended by everything. Last House on the Left was refused a certificate for cinema release by the BBFC in 1974 due to the scenes of sadism and violence. That's their excuse. But during the early 1980s home video boom, the film was released uncut. Save for an incidental gore-free scene with the comic relief cops and the end credit roll. So those are the only parts left out of this uncut video. The parts that had no gore were slapstick comedy, black comedy. Strange. As a video that did not fall under the BBFC's remit at the time, which of course is why the Nasties exists as a thing, because these videos were sneaking in under the radar. This changed, of course, when this scare started in '82, leading to, of course, the video recordings at 1984. The whole reason why we do this subject. And the movie landed on the Department of Public Prosecution's list of video nasties and was promptly banned. What followed next is quite interesting, I think. The film remained banned throughout the remainder of the 1980s and into the 1990s, which is very intriguing because not everything gets... someone started to get away with it later on. However, it started to develop an underground cult reputation in the UK. In fact, certain critics, the famous one like Mark Kermode, started to talk about it and mention it and saying it was a bit of an icon of horror and stuff like that. But in 2000, as late as 2000, the film was presented to the BBFC for theatrical certification and it was refused in the year 2000. We've had Scream by then.
Yeah.
We have had many horrors and you're still refusing it.
Yeah.
So, good on this company that fought tooth and nail for this movie. We're going to follow up now. The independent film label Blue Underground toured an uncut print around Britain without a BBFC certificate. Southampton City Council then intervened and granted it its own 18 certificate, so it could be played in Southampton. I do quite enjoy this stuff.
Really random.
And then the film was granted a one-off license for a one-off showing in Leicester in June 2000, after which, directly after, the BBC interfered and declared that it would never receive any form of certification.
They were annoyed by that.
So they were getting right pissy about what was going on. In June 2002, the BBC prevailed against an appeal made to the Video Appeals Committee by the video distributor Blue Underground Limited. The BBC had required 16 seconds of cuts to scenes of sexual violence before it would grant the video an 18 certificate. Now that's not many seconds, but Blue Underground Limited was steadfast and refused to make any cuts. So the BBFC rejected the video again. The distributor then appealed to the VAC, the committee, who upheld the BBFC's decision. Get in the bin. But during the appeal, hilariously, film critic Mark Kermode was called in as a horror expert to make the case for the film's historical importance. However, his report resulted in the committee not only upholding the cuts, but demanding more. So that just backfired incredibly. Finally, the film was eventually given an 18 certificate on July 7th, 2002 with 31 seconds of cut, and was released in the UK and DVD in May 2003. The cutscenes were viewable as a slideshow extra on the disc, and there was a link to the website where the cutscenes could be viewed. And then finally, the BBFC, as the world changed and everything changed, classified the uncut film for video release on March 17th, 2008. Where you can watch it in all its glory, as well as depending upon what version, because there are several versions out there as well. Always be wary when something claims to be uncut. Is it? Check your run times. Check the comparatives. Always do that. And so much has this times changed. The Last House on the Left was remade into a 2009 film.
Not much long. Not much.
It pretty much signaled the moment it became uncut and all that. They were like, "Yep, boom, we're good. Let's do it." Off we go and running. Of course, things like I Speak to Your Grave got the exact same treatment too. But yeah, the story around Last House on the Left against the BBFC has been. It's story, to say the least. But it is fascinating to see how steadfast they were and how things have changed when it just went, all right, uncut. It's out now. It's totally fine. Absolutely. Last House on the Left is one of the iconic horror films of the Nasties list. It's a movie I've seen several times as well. And it's a movie I do enjoy. I think it's a hard watch. I think it'd be very difficult. But, you know, because of the reasons you know, it's obviously the humiliation, the rape, the violence and all that. But I think it tells a good story. And it's a good revenge thriller in that front.
It is. I had some trouble with the ending.
Okay. Because it wasn't happy.
Yeah,
right.
Happy.
Okay. No, that's fair. It's not a happy ending, you know. It's not. It's satisfying, but you're like, okay, yeah. Oh, that's an ending. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk it through, give you a bit of a rundown as well. But before that, the cast. Sandra Peabody as Mary Collingwood. Lucy Grantham as Phyllis Stone. David A. Hess, the legendary David Hess as Krug Stillo. Fred Lincoln as Fred Weasel Podolsky. Jeremiah Rain as Sadie. Mark Sheffer as Junior. Eleanor Shaw, although she's credited as Cynthia Carr, as Estelle Collingwood. And Richard Towers credited as Gaylord St. James as Dr. John Collingwood. So this film doesn't hang around. It's one of the more surprising things is we're introduced to Mary Collingwood as she wants to go to a concert with her friend Phyllis Stone for her 17th birthday. That's an important aspect, I think. The fact that they make it very clear she's 17 to be 17. So she's very young. Her parents, Estelle and John, aren't too happy about her being friends with Phyllis, because Phyllis is a bit of a hippie, wild child and all that. But they let her go, and Phyllis gives her Mary a present, a peace symbol necklace. It's very important, that piece of jewellery. Phyllis and Murray head into the city, and you can tell they're fish out of water. They really are. And it's filmed in a way to make the city look dangerous. And they do not look comfortable. Absolutely. And along the way, we hear a news report about a recent prison escape involving criminals Krug, who's a rapist and serial killer, his heroin-addicted son, Junior, Sadie, who's a psychopath who is promiscuous, like that kind of thing, and Fred Weasel, or known as Weasel, who's a child molester and peeping Tom. So they've got a pretty hefty rap sheet, this group. And you're like, okay, we're hearing that, so these girls are actually going to run into them, of course. In fact, they almost immediately do, as they run into Junior on the street, as they want to get some weed, buy some marijuana, and Junior offers to sell it to them, leading them to the apartment where they are then introduced to the rest of the criminals and trapped by them. And we're off and rolling as is sort of seen. They're gang raped, it's abusive, it's mean, it's not very nice. It's all within the first 20 minutes.
It's all just straight in with it.
It really, really is. And it's it makes you feel a little uncomfortable.
And it's funny, like, even though Phyllis is like more street smart, she still goes into someone's apartment.
It's pretty stupid.
So she's still young. So like, as much as she might think, oh, she's a bit more world-wise,
she's still young.
She still goes in.
Absolutely. She's probably been surrounded by as well. Like, people are like, oh yeah, you know, it's all good, you know, relax and stuff like that. Admittedly, you know, you're pretty unlucky to end up going in an apartment with a bunch of like prison escaped sex offenders. paedophiles, murderers. Do you know what I mean? That's just really unlucky, unfortunately. But what's always kind of difficult about this movie is they also intercut this scene as well with her parents, Mary, setting up for her party, the surprise party doing at home, and that's an element I think that adds a bit of chilliness to the whole feel.
And it is like every parent's nightmare.
Of
like
course.
when you send your kids, like when kids go out
Yep.
at that age, you always say, don't do this, don't do that. So, yeah. And then they've done exactly what they said.
Yeah, be safe, that kind of thing.
Straight
Yep,
away. And
absolutely.
and they're in the worst possible situation. Like the worst, like I said, the worst possible luck of meeting this lot.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's quite hard hitting.
Yeah. The next morning, Mary and Phyllis are kind of bound, gagged, and put in the trunk of Krug's car, and then they drive off. They're planning to go across the border, but they actually break down while travelling through some woods. Coincidentally, when Mary's taken out, why don't I say Mary? Because it's spelled with an I, but it's Mary nonetheless. And Mary recognises, she gets out of the car, out of the trunk, and she sees a sign for the road that's near her house, kind of giving her hope that she might be able to escape and run there. We then end up in the woods, and I'm not going to get too descriptive here. This is where a lot of the majority of the forced violence, humiliation, it's about urination, sexual acts with each other. That kind of stuff. It's not comfortable watching.
No.
I can't imagine it was comfortable to film. I really felt that great about it. I know a lot of the actors aren't particularly complimentary about what they did at the time. I always find that bullshit because you did it. It's still a film, that kind of aspect. But so it's not to the point where I think it's unwatchable or horrific or so like too real.
No, we watched quite.
We've particularly if you're doing a lot of these movies, it's just, I don't want to say it's bad taste, because in the context of the characters of who they are, that's the kind of people they
they're
are.
Not in prison for like fraud. Tax evasion.
It's not. This is what they've done to other people. It's why they're in prison. So I'm okay with that kind of thing. Yeah. But we kind of do need to move the story on, and it gets that way with Phyllis distracting the group to give Mary an opportunity to escape, but she's then chased by Sadie and Weasel. While Junior stays, he's forced to stay behind to guard Mary. It's here we kind of see that Junior is the weaker of the bunch, particularly because of his heroin addiction.
He's a mess.
He is, absolutely. As Mary tries to gain his trust by giving him her necklace and gives him a nickname, calling him Willow, that kind of thing. Meanwhile, Phyllis being chased stumbles across a cemetery, but she's cornered and stabbed by Weasel, where she's then stabbed several times over and then dies. She's now dead. Meanwhile, while this is going on, Mary's convinced Junior to let her go, and he's kind of just given up, where he's almost like, he doesn't so much, like, she's like, I'm going to go, and he just sort of sits there. Yeah. I guess because he kind of knows that she isn't really going to escape, because immediately, Krug is there, absolutely. He then kind of gets a bit handsy with a blade and rapes her as well. She's got a bit more of that. And then you kind of get really like, I think arguably the film's darkest scene, which is the sort of silence as everyone's sort of sitting around. And there's almost a sense of, not regret from the criminals, but almost like they're having a moment of clarity about what they've just done.
Yeah, it might be like the setting, like they're just literally out in the middle of nowhere, and like, this is where their lives have taken them.
Like what happened to us.
Like in the city there's probably distractions, and they might have been sober at this point doing this. You don't know their sort of mental state. They might have actually sobered up. But at this point, driven out to the middle of nowhere and gone, oh yeah, this is what we are. Yeah, they kind of watch. They watch as Mary gets up and walks into the lake. Like they kind of watch it before Krug then comes behind her and shoots her with a gun, killing her. What's particularly notable about this, and why I think this might be the darkest scene, is because there's no music and it's very, very quiet. It's very silent. It's very cold feeling. And a lot of these films, they kind of overcompensate with like really jaggedy,
jarring,
music.
like noises, fucking pan of dishes being dropped down the stairs, that kind of bollocks.
And we find it with like horror films. The silence is sometimes worse because it puts you more in that situation. Because you're watching a film with all these kind of crazy soundtrack, you wouldn't have that in real life.
Of course.
But silence. Yeah, it would be. Like the sounds of nature. What else goes on? You wouldn't get this. Yeah.
No, I agree. It's a strong moment. But one thing I also think as well is I want to see these guys get their comeuppance, and I feel like that's super important. You want to feel it. And whereas we've seen other movies that have done this, Late Night Trains is a good example, where the people got a comeuppance but they didn't get it quite the way you wanted to. This film will give you what you want. Because what they end up doing, having broken down and realising there's a nearby house, they change out their bloody clothes and then basically go to the Collingwood's homes, and Mary's parents' home, and pretend to be travelling salespeople. Yeah. And the charm. They do well. Like, it's quite impressive. Krug in particular is like that's why we kind of rate. We will say we rate David Hess as an actor.
So good.
He really, really is good. Absolutely. And I think generally the whole cast is really strong in this as well.
And again, I think it's the whole thing of, because they've got a female I know it's sexy to say, but because they've got a female on top.
Yeah, it really helps.
The parents are like, okay, it kind of adds validity to the fact that they're kind of
Trans husband, yeah, absolutely, yeah, upstanding people, yeah. It does add it does add that validity because she's very demure and she's very, very kind of sweet. They sometimes let the facade slide here and there, which is kind of cool as well.
Mainly her, isn't it?
It's mainly her, Sadie, yeah.
She's kind of the most unhinged out of all of them, I think.
Yeah, that's one of the things I always thought was cool when I saw this film when I was young, was the fact that I'd never, not often seen like women in a more sadistic role, inflicting punishment on other women like this.
And it literally goes just with what I was saying, like. They probably looked at a group with a female and gone, oh, okay, they're probably okay.
Yep.
Where in real life, it's like, no, she was pretty most depraved out of all of them, really.
Yeah,
like
there's no argument for that. Yeah, absolutely. Mary's parents end up letting them stay overnight, worried now about the fact that their child hasn't come home. They're calling and speaking to the police. This is where you get these more slapstick moments. The police are kind of, these two police officers are used as kind of bumbling idiots. And it is a jarring tone shift that really, to be honest, doesn't fit. No. It doesn't.
No, they might be a bit like not used to kind of like, because they're not city cops. Obviously, city cops you probably get bombarded with.
Yep.
Because you've got more population, obviously more crime.
Yep.
It's just science, not science, like human nature. But the fact they are so
stupid.
Yeah.
Stupid.
It's just the opposite. For a film that's so dark, they have no soundtrack at times. They want to be this dark film. I would have made him incompetent, but not.
It's like he was thinking, I need to lighten the load. Yeah. But yeah, he's gone too far the other way and made it like, I say, the term slapstick comes up here, and it's just like you said, Laurel and Hardy, tripping over each other and stuff like that. It's weird. Yeah. It's weird. But yeah, the gang end up finding photos of Mary and kind of realise it's their home. They're kind of aware of that and worried. And the problem is Junior's now going through heroin withdrawal. Yeah. And they're going to having to deal with that problem as well. This makes them vomit and all that. They pass it off as he's just sick, and stuff like that. But while he's in the bathroom kind of throwing up, Estelle comes in and sees he's wearing the peace necklace that went around Mary's neck. So that's the sort of first thing. And seeing that, she takes advantage and goes into their luggage and finds blood-slaked clothing. And then overhears them talking about Mary's death and her disposal in a nearby lake. They rush out in the middle of the night to the woods and they find her body and basically swear revenge. And that's what the last part of the movie kicks into. Yeah. A very violent and gory revenge. Estelle seduces Weasel and bites his dick off. Leaves him to bleed to death. John takes a shotgun, shoots at Krug and Sadie. Krug manages to escape in the living room. He overpowers John. There's a lot of fighting back and forth between there. And during that as well, Junior's being pathetic and all that. So Krug encourages Junior to kill himself, and Junior then does that. But John during that fetches a chainsaw, and Krug's shitting himself at this point, rightfully so. But he is incapacitated by an electrocution booby trap, and John ends up killing Krug with the chainsaw, while Sadie falls into the backyard swimming pool, and Estelle cuts her throat in there as well. So they slaughter this. And the movie ends with them sitting on a couch, bloodied, covered in blood, as the sheriff arrives. And that's your ending. Yeah. And you're like, whoa, okay. The problem why it's not happy, because you're like, well, the gang got their comeuppance. Of course that's a happy ending. The reason why is because ultimately you're going to prison. Yeah. Crime of passion, the reason and all that, the level of violence that you just inflicted and all that. Yeah, you're going to struggle to get past this one, I'm afraid, guys. And their age and stuff like that, plus the fact they've lost their daughter as well, mentally, on everything they've done. Their lives are over. And that's not nice. It's the destruction of an entire family.
I didn't want that. I feel like the audience should be rewarded for getting through this film.
Do you not feel the reward is seeing the gang get a comeuppance style as well?
No.
And the fear when they realise they're in trouble.
No.
You didn't enjoy Krug cowering from the chainsaw?
Yeah,
I did.
I did, but the ending of knowing that they're going to go to prison for it, when people go, no, they shouldn't have gone.
Right, there's an argument to be said that maybe they wouldn't go to prison, that their age and the scenario around it, and in a jury.
They would have called that excessive.
Yeah, excessive would have been. Yeah,
they would have called it excessive.
But then
premeditated.
But then you could argue premeditation is an argument that didn't take place, but there's also an argument who they killed. These hardened criminals, these people nuances. I'm not saying we're breaking down a criminal justice system that we wouldn't really understand. What I'm saying is,
we're just trying to leave you there. Maybe that's why they do leave you there.
Yeah, maybe it's that kind of reason, like that. But I'm okay with it because I feel like it's satisfying enough in regard. It's dark, but it's satisfying enough to see these killers get theirs in the violent ways that they have dished out. I liked seeing the fear. I didn't love that Junior got out. feel like he was no better and deserved what he got. Don't act like I'm sympathetic towards him because he's not as strong as the others and he happens to be addicted to heroin. Nay, bruv, nay. No. But I appreciate Weasel getting his dick bitten off, and left to bleed to death as well. That's an ending. Sadie, the fact when she gets her throat cut, the fear she's got in that pool, she realizes she's trapped. These are all stuff that they deserve exactly what they get.
But I feel like Train Murders, that was less satisfying.
It was less satisfying because it was just a bit. He just shoots them and the woman gets away with it. Yeah. That's what we don't. That's a big thing I don't want. Don't let them get away with it. All right. The most satisfying would have been they get arrested. And they go to prison and stuff like that kind of thing. But so like at least they've got that.
But they've already shown you that the police wouldn't have
useless.
got there in time and wouldn't have been able to overpower 3 of them.
No, absolutely. They'd probably got away. If they broke out of prison, they'd have probably gotten away. And then they'd have crossed the border. And I think they were trying to get to Canada, weren't they, as well? So there's that element of it. But it is, from beginning to end, a very violent film that really makes you feel a bit horrible inside overall. But this is really important. I think it's a very good film. I think it's one of the stronger video nasties for a reason. There's a reason why it's a cult following. Because it's a well-told story that does it in spades. It will give you moments of peace, and then it will go, no, here's some extreme violence. Do you agree? Take our heads off for the fact that we don't think anything should be banned. Do you agree and understand why the BBFC reacted the way it did when it was first released, based on what you saw, and compared to what else was around it?
It's difficult because I feel like the not having a soundtrack and not. I think that's a big part of it. Because it takes it away from a film and more like
you're a voyeur watching quietly behind the trees.
And I feel like that kind of offended. I think that got to him more, and I think sometimes like the humiliation that in a film sometimes is worse than just hitting someone.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
Because you do a lot more damage. Obviously, it's not damaging, but the fact that like when they want to urinate and then he's forced them to do these kind of things, that prolonged stuff is like if I was watching it going. Entertainment? What am I watching? There's porn, there's this dark porn, people that enjoy that. This is a film and I can see why.
I can as well, but I disagree with it still because to me there's nothing here I haven't seen before like around that period of time as well. Others that may have been reached the list as well but then got cut earlier or released earlier. Do you know what my biggest offence for The Last House on the Left is that it's not that pornographic. And that while it has violence in that aspect, you are not seeing it's not pornographic in that sense. You know what I mean? Well, there are some boobs and stuff like that. There's not a whole lot of it. You're not seeing pornographic rape scenes and elements like that. We've seen rape scenes done a lot more pornographic than this movie did. What to me it screams, and I always come back to this, is can't you see it's a film? Why are you getting childish about it and stuff like that? You slap the rating on it because that's what you're saying to people. You need to be of this age to see this film. That's why it exists. That's why eventually we got to that element. I do understand it's harsh. I wouldn't recommend this to people who want to watch something who don't like this style. If you tell me, I really don't like sexualized violence and stuff like that, should I watch The Last House on the Left? I'd be like, no, it's probably one of the ultimate ones.
And I do feel the video nasties. A lot of more of their issues are towards non-fantastical. So a lot of these video nasties, there's no fantastical element really. The Cannibal Holocaust, obviously based in what people might have thought about certain tribes and things like that.
Was arguably the most famous, isn't it?
But I can't think of a lot of the nasties we watch are based in real life.
Cannibal Holocaust issues were based off the animals killing more than anything else. So the violence done to humans and that were a little bit more okay than say the violence in this. And I think that's the problem. I think you kind of sum it up there. I think ultimately Last House on the Left does a good job of making it feel a bit more real. Guerrilla style. That's what Sean S. Cunningham actually said they filmed it like. They wanted it to be guerrilla style, and you do get that where you almost are like a voyeur watching amongst the trees, because a lot of the time trees kind of like take up half the space. Leaves are in the way of the camera that we're peering through, and I imagine that would have been quite upsetting or difficult for some people to watch. I completely understand that. We're not so stupid as to not be able to acknowledge the time period it came out in as well and compare that. But when you look at the nasty list overall, and I guess it's the nonsensical nature of this series and why it'll be cool when we kind of finish it really more than anything else, is compare this, what we're talking about here, to some of the last ones we've done. I Miss You, Hugs and Kisses. That was a video we did a little short while ago. That is a nasty. On the same level, although not on the same level because it wasn't banned, in that thing, but
I'll say
it's on the same list. The same list
Yeah.
as this.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What?
I do notice a pattern with these video nasties as well. A lot of these I probably wouldn't put on again. Like, they're not a lot of them go, oh, do you know what I fancy watching?
The Last House on the Left. Yeah.
It's kind of like comparison to like another film that's kind of really makes you feel really grubby and just sad at the end. Is like Requiem for a Dream. It's a film that I'm not going to go, oh, I really feel like watching that film again because it's just such a pick me up.
Yep.
But you watch it, you appreciate it, and in context to this, we kind of go, okay, yeah, there's parts of it that would go, yeah. But
on the nasty list, its best comparisons, I Spit in Your Grave.
Yeah.
But I would argue I Spit in Your Grave has longer sexualised violence.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one seems to have had more trouble than I Spit in Your Grave.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe, like I said, it was the fact that the BBFC didn't like being challenged the way it was being challenged by this Blue Underground company, and started to dig its heels until eventually relenting.
They thought it might. I reckon they thought it might have started a pattern. So one company starts going.
Yeah. They certainly seem to get quite pig-headed about it,
Yeah.
to keep refusing it, and stuff like that. So it's quite intriguing more than anything else. But what's your overall thoughts? Do you think it's a good movie?
I do, but there's only so much of like these kind of films. Like I said,
well, we're pretty much done now with these types of films.
Yeah,
We are pretty much done.
They are films, but it kind of just dwells on like your worst fears and like,
of course,
people that you care about. You kind of, especially like young people, teenagers going out into the world. You're like, when you're young, you don't get where your parents go, don't do this. You just think, oh, they're just narrowing on. But when you're an adult and you look back on things, you're like, oh, yeah, there's a whole lot of that out there. I won't watch it again. There's no appeal to go, I really want to see someone get raped and tortured. Would
you be interested in seeing the remake to compare it?
Yeah, for comparison, yeah.
There's a great website out there. It's called gbhblofficial.com, and you can have a certain person's opinion on that rubbish remake. But there you go.
But yeah, I think I'd always prefer like the fantastical.
Of course, so would I.
Based.
So would I. But I've got these movies have a place in it, and I'm happy with that. I think this is a very good movie. I don't think it's necessarily a classic. I don't think it's necessarily the best of the nasties we've seen. Depends what you kind of, there's been movies in the nasty list up to this point I've enjoyed way more. Man from Deep River than I ever expected. Like, that's a good example of one that I never expected to enjoy and ended up thoroughly
Week
enjoying.
Of the Killer.
Huh?
The Week of the Killer. Oh God, I think of the Spanish name. The Butcher Man, the Meat Man. What's the one with the Spanish film we just watched?
Oh, the Cannibal Man.
The Cannibal Man.
Yeah, the Cannibal Man. Yeah, the Meat Man. Yeah, the Cannibal Man was another great example. Movies that not necessarily. Whereas The Last House on the Left, I went in very aware of what the movie was and came away pretty much how I felt when I saw it the first time, which is that's pretty good, and I kind of like I can enjoy it in that bubble. I really, really can. So that's really, really important. But it isn't nasty, and that's why we've talked about it. Yeah. That's why we've covered it in this. You know what to do. You got any thoughts on it? Just let us know what you think in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Tumblr. Go to Patreon and help us out over there. That's patreon.com/gbhbl, as well as Big Cartel, where you can find some of our merchandise. We have a podcast running on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you like this video, do us a favour, hit the subscribe button and help the channel grow. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?